Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Melissa and I'm the owner of seasonedandservedblog.com. So I have some very exciting news to share with you that has been in the works for almost 4 years now. And if you follow me on Instagram, you will already know this news, but I am writing a cookbook. So this is the very first cookbook I've ever written, and I've had such a great time writing my cookbook and working through the process, and I am just very excited for it. So we're in the throes of the process. The book isn't done yet, but in this video, I did want to tell you a little bit about why I decided to write a cookbook, what it's about, as well as just the entire process to date and why I did self-publishing. So if you want to learn about my cookbook writing process and where I'm at on my cookbook writing journey, just keep on watching. So the first step of writing a cookbook is to actually decide why you want to write a cookbook. Is it something you want for your family, for your friends, for you? Decide on why you want to write a cookbook. So for me, I've been a recipe developer and blogger for 8 years now, which is crazy. I can't believe it's been that long. But for me, writing recipes, sharing them with friends and family and my community, I think is something that I really like to do and would love to turn this into like a full-time job. I could do it every day. It is probably my most favorite thing in the world. So after working on this for 8 years, I decided I want to have my own collection of recipes in a book that I can have forever, and my friends, my family, my community can have that forever, and you can always refer to it. So I think it was a logical next step to kind of go off the internet and actually produce a real, tangible book that you could hold in your hands. Also for me, being in this industry for 8 years, it also felt like it was a logical step for my career and my career development in learning new skills, being creative on a totally different level, and just building my skills overall. Now, currently, I am a fairly small food blogger, YouTuber, recipe developer. Across all my social media platforms, I probably only have a couple thousand followers, but honestly, that isn't stopping me from writing a cookbook. It is just something I've always wanted to do, and it again, just brings me so much joy. So if you're in a similar situation and you only have like a couple thousand followers, even a couple hundred followers, and you still want to write a cookbook, I would say go for it. You don't have to have hundreds of thousands or millions of followers. If you really want to do it and you have a good purpose in doing it, I would say just to go for it, because I think it'll be very rewarding at the end. And also, if it's going to help build your career, your skills, all of that, I would say that's another great reason to write a cookbook if you are interested. So the next step in writing a cookbook is to actually decide what the theme of your cookbook is going to be about. So as you know, there's tons of cookbooks out there in the world. There's some for a particular diet, so like vegan cookbooks, keto cookbooks, Mediterranean diet cookbooks. There's some for different cultures, Italian, French, Peruvian, like so many different unique cookbooks out there. And I think when deciding on your theme, to choose your theme and make it a little bit unique to you and what you do. So my cookbook is about seasonal recipes with local ingredients. And for me, I've tailored it to the west coast of Canada, which is where I live. I live in British Columbia, and it is a beautiful place to live. We have so much good food here in this province, and a lot of it is actually produced in BC, making it really local, delicious, and nutritious. So we have really great seafood, great dairy, great produce. Everything we have here is delicious. It's so good. So I think having those seasonal and local recipes is really important. So there's lots of seasonal cookbooks out there already, but I'm making my cookbook a little bit more unique to me by having entertaining and hosting content in the book as well. So in addition to all the seasonal recipes that I have for each of the 4 seasons, I'm also including an entire menu for a themed dinner for each of the seasons. And you guys know I love to entertain. I know we couldn't entertain for a couple years there with COVID, but now that that's like pretty much not over, but like we've adapted to it, I think, entertaining and hosting friends and family is something I really like to do. And I know a lot of people can be intimidated by that. So I wanted to share, a set menu that you can have all the recipes done and serve to your guests, and it'll be really fun and amazing. So overall, I think if you're writing a cookbook, make it unique. And if you have a brand that's already established, make it reflect your brand so it's a little bit more genuine, a little bit more tailored to your community and your audience, and it will just make a little bit more sense. If I was to put out like a keto book, like that would make no sense at all for what my goals and my mission is for my blog and my business. So I think for me, having the local seasonal recipes is spot on. So after deciding why you want to write a cookbook and deciding on the theme of your book, the next step is to plan out your recipes and start writing. So for me, this planning and writing process was probably my most favorite part of my cookbook journey so far. For me, I am someone who loves to plan and organize things. I'm a Virgo, so everything for me has to be perfect. Something I'm working on, but I loved coming up with ideas for my cookbook, all the recipes I wanted to include, some classics, some twists on classics, local recipes as well. Like everything, part of that process was so much fun. So after compiling a list of the recipes that I wanted to include in my cookbook, I then began drafting up all the recipes. So I went ahead, wrote out all the ingredients, all the directions, measurements, all of that in a draft form. And then after that, I would take that and test the recipe, which I'll talk about in the next step. And for me, this actual writing process didn't take me that long. Again, I've been working in this industry for 8 years. I know how to write a recipe. I know what goes into it. And for me, I'm just really honed in on that skill. So the actual writing process didn't take that long, even though when I planned my book initially, I had 100 recipes. So I blew through writing 100 recipes in probably 6 months, which was crazy. Especially given like I have a full-time job, I have a 9-to-5 job. So those 8 hours working there do take up a lot of time during the day, but I would find like, after work, I would just, sit at my computer again later on in the evening, write out the recipes, and it's kind of like soothing for me in a way. So I'm kind of weird like that, but it didn't really take me that long to write out 100 recipes. Now, in the end, I didn't include the full 100 recipes in my cookbook. I'll talk a bit more about that later. But yeah, I think now we're down to like 70-ish, which is definitely more feasible and manageable. So once all the recipes were written out, I had a first version of my manuscript, and it was so cool to see a whole like book full of recipes in a Word document. It was kind of crazy. But yeah, having that first version of the manuscript is really rewarding. You can see what you've achieved, all the work you've put into it, and it was just so rewarding. So the next step after you have your first version of your manuscript written is to actually go out and test all your recipes. So testing all the recipes is an obvious thing to do. You want to obviously make sure that your recipes have integrity, and when people go to make them, they're able to achieve success with the measurements, directions, instructions, all of that. You want to make sure that all your recipes work out, because there's nothing worse than following a recipe to a T and it doesn't work out. It is just a waste of time, a waste of ingredients. It sucks. I hate it. So for me, in my integrity, I tested out all of my recipes. And that process of testing recipes does take a long time. It requires a lot of effort, costs money as well for, making the recipe multiple times, but it is definitely worth it to have a recipe in the end that works out. And I do this no matter what I'm working on, whether I'm doing recipes for this cookbook or my blog or my clients. I always test a recipe at least 2-ish times, sometimes 3 times. For baking recipes, I probably have tested stuff probably like 4 or 5 times in this cookbook, like just to make sure, because baking is very precise. So I test those baking recipes out quite a bit. For me, the testing process has taken quite a long time. So even like when I was still writing the manuscript, I began testing recipes that I had already finished. And for me, I think it took probably 3.5 years to actually test out all these recipes, which again is like crazy, but you want to make sure, your recipes work out and are accurate. So it is definitely worth the time and effort to do that. So I think taking that time to actually test out the recipes and provide actual quality recipes to people really goes a long way for your integrity and credibility. especially nowadays. When I was looking for, direction on writing a cookbook on YouTube, I didn't really find a lot of good content, I would say. Like there were some really great videos out there, but a lot of the videos that I was seeing, people were saying like, oh, write a cookbook using ChatGPT and publish. And I'm like, sure, ChatGPT can write a cookbook for you and write a bunch of recipes, but are these people actually taking the time to test them out, making sure they work, making sure everything is clear and accurate before they're publishing, or are they just publishing these cookbooks? So yeah, it's kind of sketchy. I guess you got to be careful on what you buy. But for me, I obviously want to have a really high caliber book with great recipes, and I'm obviously taking the time and putting in the effort to do that. So even though it's a lot of work, I think it's definitely worth it in the end, because you're going to have really great recipes and people are going to enjoy them. All right, so after writing the manuscript and testing out the recipes, the next step that I took in my cookbook journey was to do the photography. And this is the stage that I'm currently on in my cookbook writing journey. So I'm not going to fully get into what it takes to do all the cookbook photography and stuff like that if you're doing it on your own like I am. I'll talk about that in part 2 of this video. So if you want to learn about that, hit the subscribe button down below. So the photography is a very important aspect in writing a cookbook. Obviously, a cookbook with no pictures should be criminal. People should go to jail. I think that's probably the worst thing ever. For me, in my cookbook that I'm writing, I'm actually doing a photo for each recipe. So 70 recipes, 70 photo shoots, it's a lot. And for me, I'm doing everything myself. I don't have the resources to hire a professional like recipe or a food photographer, anything like that. So I'm doing it myself, and that is where I'm currently at. And obviously after photography comes merging the manuscript with the photos, working on the design, all of that. And again, I'm not fully there yet. I'm still working on this. So we'll talk about that in part 2 as well. So for me, that's where I'm at. I've done all the writing and testing, and I'm working on the photography right now. And it's been such a fun process so far, and I am just very excited for this cookbook. So all the steps that I described so far are really generic and logical in writing a cookbook. And you can write a cookbook, on your own. You can fully develop a recipe cookbook for your family or your friends. But if you do want to take it a step further and get your book professionally published, that is a whole other thing. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the self-publishing process that I've went through with my cookbook so far. So for me, when I set out on my cookbook writing journey, I knew I did want to publish my cookbook. And obviously I'm a very small recipe developer and YouTuber and blogger, so I didn't have publishing companies approaching me to write a cookbook. Like, I'm not Ina Garten, I'm not, anyone like that, anyone super famous like that, where a publishing company would approach me to write a book. There's no way. And a lot of us are not at that caliber. There are people who write books who aren't totally famous, aren't having publishers approach them. People can write books on their own, and people have been doing this for years. And the way people do this is through self-publishing. So the idea with self-publishing is that you write your own book, whether it's a novel, a cookbook, anything like that, and you bring it to a self-publishing company where they're able to help you with the design of your book, proofreading, editing, all of that, formatting, and then they'll actually print out your book and distribute it for you. And obviously with self-publishing, this will cost some money because you're paying a company in doing all of that work to bring your book to life. Whereas if you're being approached by a publisher, typically the publisher will pay you money to write a book. So we are doing the opposite. So obviously, if you're looking to bring your cookbook out into the world, looking for a publishing company for self-publishing is very important and really should be one of the first steps that you look into if you know that this is your ultimate goal. For me, I actually didn't do that. I actually got through fully planning and actually began writing my book before I actually started looking for a self-publishing company. And that process worked out for me because I had a general idea of what I wanted to do, approximate length of the cookbook. So if you're able to more accurately say, I expect my book to be this many words, or have these sort of design features, they're able to say whether or not, first of all, whether or not they can do it, and second, if they are able to do it, approximately how much it's going to cost. And when planning a big project like a cookbook, knowing that information is ideal because you don't want to get to the point where you've written your cookbook and you're ready to send it out and you realize it's going to cost you like 10 grand to publish it. That would be heartbreaking. So having that information and some preliminary information going into meetings with representatives from these companies is very important. So when I was undertaking this process, I really looked at a lot of local companies in British Columbia that did self-publishing. But when I was looking, I found that a lot of these companies were very costly and they didn't offer all the services that I wanted from a self-publishing company. So I actually decided on a company out of Manitoba, and they are called Freeze & Press. And this self-publishing company really impressed me because they were very transparent with everything, not only the process for self-publishing and the services that they provided, but also the costs. So it was really nice to be able to talk to the representative and, give him an idea of the book I was writing and all the information and the needs that I had. And he was able to come back and give me an actual realistic quote that I found to be very reasonable, and that to this day they've really maintained in, working within my budget that I have. And I do want to be really transparent in this series about, what the process is like and the actual cost as well. So I'm going to tell you the cost of self-publishing my cookbook. So the cost is about $5,000. It was just over $5,000, which I thought was really reasonable for the services that they're providing. They're helping with the manuscript development, copy editing, design, production, distribution, and promotion and marketing. So they're doing a lot of things that for me, I wouldn't be able to do myself. I could probably do obviously I wrote everything, so that's a big help. But design wise in, the proper design software that you need to do, binding the book, printing the book, binding the book, distributing the book, and, even the promotion is a really big help. So I think $5,000 for doing a cookbook with 70-ish recipes, so probably about 100-ish pages, is really reasonable, I would say. At least from the places that I looked at. I got other quotes for $7,000, $8,000. One company quoted me $10,000, which I was like, no, thank you, but no. And strangely, they offered less services, so I don't know. But yeah, Freeze & Press really won me over, and I had a really great few kickoff meetings with the representative that I was working with, who, sold me the package, sold me all the different services that I would need for my cookbook. He was really great. So yeah, Mark, thank you. You really got me on this train and we are rolling. So I'm very excited. So it is really worth it to take the time to do the research and learn about all these different companies, what services they offer, and to see if their services match your needs. So that is it for today's video. I hope you found this information really helpful if you're starting to embark on a cookbook writing journey, or, even if you follow me and you want to know what I've been up to. This has been taking up quite a bit of time, but I've been enjoying the process so far, and I am very excited for this cookbook to come out. And I'm very excited to say that I'm aiming to have my cookbook out this fall, my favorite season. I had to release it during the fall, you guys. We had to. So it's slated to come out this fall, and I am very excited. I'm going to continue to take you along on this journey of writing this cookbook together here on YouTube. So if you want to follow me, see the whole process, learn a bit more about it, definitely make sure you hit that subscribe button below. And also make sure you check me out on Instagram. I do a lot more sort of updates on my Instagram. I have a whole highlight on my story of all the work that I've been doing with the recipe development and the photo shoots and all that fun stuff. So yeah, definitely make sure you follow me on YouTube and Instagram as well. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.